Good evening. We're about ready to start. First of all, I'd like to thank you all for coming out tonight on this drizzly night. I understand there were lots of accidents. We appreciate your coming out for the book signing and talk with Lisa Scottoline. I'm Merwin Chambers. I'm treasurer of the Friends of the Gwinnett County Public Library. And the purpose of the Friends is to build awareness of the Gwinnett County Library through volunteerism and developing private support. The Friends assist the library staff at events like this. We support the summer reading program. We try to secure grants, and we've been successful, to enhance the libraries and the library programs, and we promote the library system. We'd like to encourage you to join the Friends, and some of the benefits are advance notice of author events like tonight's event, reserved front row seating at author events, discounted tickets on preview night at the Aurora Theater, and a chance to make a difference in the community in which you live. So I'd encourage you to pick up a Friends brochure and to become a membership. They're at the table where you came in. A couple of housekeeping items tonight. The Friends is sponsoring a silent auction. It's over here to my left. I encourage you to participate in it. The winning numbers will be drawn 10 minutes after the signing line starts, and you must be present to win. We do have a bookseller here tonight. We'd encourage you to purchase a book from them. Percentage of tonight's sales does come back to the Friends of the Gwinnett County Library System. And before introducing Lisa, I'd like to express my thanks to the library staff for putting these events on. They're fun to work with, and they provide a valued service to the county. I don't know whether any of you have been on Facebook yet today, but it was announced today in Gwinnett Magazine, Best of Gwinnett for 2014, that the Gwinnett County Public Library is the best place to take kids. So I think we should thank the staff for that. Now for the main event. Lisa Scottoline is a New York Times best-selling author, an Edgar Award-winning author of 23 novels. Her latest book, Every 15 Minutes, some of you may have received a brochure in the mail about it. She also writes books in a weekly column called Chickwit with her daughter Francesca for the Philadelphia Inquirer. If you get a chance, I'd encourage you to go out on the internet and look at the April 5th, 2015 entry. It's a very touching essay. She's won the Edgar Award and Cosmopolitan Magazine's Fun, Fearless Fiction Award, and is past president of Mystery Writers of America. So without further introduction, Lisa Scottoline.
Come here, Merwin.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Oh, my goodness. How nice. It's so nice to see you. Thank you, Merwin. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thanks to everyone at the Gwinnett County Library System. What a wonderful honor you got with that, the best place to take your kids. It sort of segues into what I want to talk about. But first, to give a lot of love to everybody here, to the library, which is so wonderful, to a special organization that is here tonight that is very dear to my heart, Sisters in Crime. Let's hear it for Sisters in Crime. I am a past president of Mystery Writers of America and a member of Sisters in Crime. I was a founding member. I was responsible for getting them their tax-exempt status. Yes. But what's more important, I think I want to talk about, return to it later, because I think, well, I'll tell you why later. But I want to acknowledge you and thank you for being here. And there's someone else I'm going to acknowledge that's really special, whom you may not know, and that is George Scott. That is George over there. George is one of the best-known independent booksellers in the entire country. You didn't know that. I'm telling you that. George, how long have we known each other?
Oh, wow.
We're both about 17, so you have to...
Right, exactly. I'm with that. Let's see.
First books...
Devil's Horn.
So,
Right.
I wonder if
You sent me 2 cases of tasty cakes.
Yes, I send gifts to all the good-looking men on book tour.
You told me to put them in the freezer and you would give me instructions on how to thaw them out. And then you sent me 2 huge cases of these that you paid for, not the publisher, of the big beach bags. And everybody that bought 2 books would get a beach bag. By the time of the event, you said, do you have any left? I said, yeah. You said, give them to everybody. You tossed, I'm sorry guys, she tossed tasty cakes out to everybody that got the answer right. She tossed them out.
This was supposed to be me saying nice things about you, not you saying nice things about me. But what I want to say to you that tonight is a lot about libraries, but really a lot about books. And a lot about books and the way books build community. And Gwinnett County is the perfect example of that, but so is George. Because I was a beginning writer when I first came down to Atlanta to sign in Chapter 11, if you remember. And he was somebody who had that passion and just loved books and wanted to talk about books and was warm and engaging enough to get people to come into the store and also to put up with all the prima donna authors and all, you know, we're so full of ourselves half the time. But he was always so lovely, and he's a fixture nationally, and you're lucky to have him, as you are lucky to have this library system. I've been so happy to be here because I got to be part of Gwinnett Reads, and it was the last time I spoke here. So I'm looking out and I see lots of people who I've seen before. Where are the virgins? I usually say that at book signings, and then once a woman raised her hand very shyly, and I went, no, I meant people who had never been to one of my signings before. He was really embarrassed. So people who have never heard me speak, I say this because I'm going to tell some of the same stories, but I'll switch it up for you. But the most important part of the speech is something I've said before, but I want to say it again because it matters. It's about libraries. I'm here because I love libraries so much, and this is a community that loves its library back. I love libraries so much not because I'm an author and that's why. It's really because I was a kid that grew up in a really wonderful, loving household that had a single book, one book in my house. My mother hated when I told the story. What was the book? The Bible. Aren't you sweet? No, the Bible was not the book. No, that would be the most boring story in the history of stories. No, the book was TV Guide. Okay. No, there were no books, and we didn't read, we didn't see the point of it. I was the one reading all the time. I remember my mother saying very well, stop reading, you're going to ruin your eyes. Did anybody else's parents say that to them? Okay, let's hear it for, the really bad advice your parents give you, but they love you to death, And so that's what she did. But I was that kid on the floor. Actually, well, what happened was I went to the school library, and there were all these books, and Lucille Ball was not on the cover of every one. And I said, gee, it's a whole new world. And the librarian actually took my dad aside and said, you should take your kid to the library. She loves books. And so God bless him, he did. He took me to the library, and he waited in the car like a dog. Because why would you go in the library? There's no TVs. Now, you guys got TVs. He'd be there. He'd be watching the game. But I was dazzled by this stuff, trying to figure out which books to pick. If you're me, look, I'm going to date myself now, but somebody has to. In the olden days, when you were picking out a book, it would have those cards in the back. People wrote with something called a pencil. Right? And how do you choose a book? Well, if you're me, you go, well, they have nice handwriting, or there's lots of signatures on that book, so that must be a good book. Actually, it's not the worst way to pick a book. But the way I really picked a book was the ones on the side, there was a guy in profile on the side of the books. And he had a really big nose. And the Scottolinis, I know, I want to say have a really big chest, but really, we just have a really big nose. And my mother, God bless her, she passed, it was a year ago, but she said, she always used to say that we get more oxygen than anyone in the room. And if I breathe in, like, you could die. And she might be right about that. But in any event, I recognized that guy on the profile of the books, and I didn't know who he was, but it felt very familiar to me, like my Uncle Rocky. Only it turned out that as I got older, I found out that he was an Italian, and his name was Sherlock Holmes. And that's the reason I'm a mystery writer today. And when I read all those books, you know who I discovered? Somebody you might have read about as well, Nancy Drew. Can we talk about the girl detective a minute? because I think it's really illustrative, and since we have a lot of writers here tonight, you know, we'll try to talk, I'm going to try to keep it like very English majory so you're impressed. Pretend I'm Amy Tan, you know, I'm going to like wow you. So, but what the point is that when you read Nancy Drew, there's a lot, everybody who writes anything is trying to tell the telling detail. And I would suggest to you that when you think about Nancy Drew, think about what she had. She had a best friend. Yay, all girls have best friends, lucky us. She had a boyfriend because she wasn't a middle-aged woman. Because that, all right, well, that's a different discussion for when the tape is not running. She had a father who was kind of benign. I always think of him as Jimmy Stewart. Please tell me you know who the hell I'm talking about. Okay, thank you. Thank you. What did she lack? Think about what she did not have, Nancy Drew. Remarkably, for popular American fiction, she didn't have a mother. Why? You have to say to yourself, why? Well, because so she could have all these adventures. Of course, because like if my mother were Nancy Drew's mother, like I would be in the convent, right? There would be none of the searching for the missing staircase and all the tchotchkes and all the debris and the detritus she always finds to find. That's the top line of the plot. When you're talking about plot, there's always a little task, and the task is she's got to find whatever the crappy thing is. But what really is happening in Nancy Drew, and what is the really telling detail in Nancy Drew, in my opinion, is the roadster. Right? The roadster matters. In my opinion, I think it's because the roadster is Nancy Drew. The roadster takes you back to the time, really going back, see the USA in a Chevrolet. Or to Bruce Springsteen. Even that's a dated reference, which I can't even believe. But, right? Where roll down the window and let the four wheels will take you anywhere. This very quintessentially American notion that cars are adventure. And the cool thing about Nancy Drew, and I would suggest to you that the reason she spoke to young girls is because she was firmly in the driver's seat. Remarkable. Remarkable. Drop dead, frigging remarkable. That is a literary term. If you're not familiar, try to keep up. I can't define everything for you. That's what's incredible. And so when I started to be a writer, I started to notice in crime fiction, and this is sort of the development of Sisters in Crime, that when you go back to the olden days, and we're very rich culture in this country with crime fiction. We're interested. Justice is a really important thing, right? Aaron Hernandez is going to prison. We want to read about these questions. It was very male-dominated. And the main stories were about men. Mickey Spillane, all these characters were men. And Sisters in Crime actually is an organization that was formed by women crime writers who said, can we play too? It's not male bashing, it's just more inclusive. It's just, and it was Sue Grafton and Sarah Paretsky. If you look at the advent and the development of crime fiction, you'll see the time when women came in. And for a while, the women, well, they started to bring something else to it. If you started to write, let's say in 1994, when I did, I was a trial lawyer. I grew up on Perry Mason. But I didn't want to be Della Street. I wasn't Della Street. I knew as much as Perry Mason. I've been in front of a jury, and I wanted my characters to be Nancy Drew. And that was, listen, Sisters in Crime gave me an early head start, and it helps all of us now. But the point of it is, to me, a very American one. Because it's not that the women main characters, it's really that there's a diversity of voice, that there's people of color writing, and all kinds of different voices come in. That's the whole point of the First Amendment, isn't it? So, and that's a sort of a way to, in a circular way for a moment, to talk about libraries. Because when I think about what matters to me and what libraries do to build community, for me, I go back to the funniest thing, the simplest thing, my library card. Do you remember your library card? Why do you remember your library card when you kind of forget where your phone is? Because there's an emotional attachment to it. And my library card was orange and little and stiff and kind of weird, and it had a little metal plate and you inked it, and my number was 5359. Want to know a secret? That's my cell phone number. I said, I want my cell phone number to match my library card. Who cares? I do. But the point is, I've never said that before out loud. The point is that the library card said to me that even though you are loved at home, it was a little bit of a ticket. It was a little bit of a passport to a place where they got me, where they understood if I just wanted to sit and read all day long and, yes, ruin my eyes. And that's why I love to come and speak at libraries, and especially one as supportive and supported as this one, because I think I stand in a representative capacity. I'm the kid walking in the door every day to all of your libraries, your incredible library system. Some of those kids are underprivileged, or some of those kids have the dough, but they're just not really understood. In any event, the library becomes a place where children and adults feel nurtured and find their imagination stretched. And I really think when you go back to something like another famous classic that didn't have a mother, To Kill a Mockingbird. To Kill a Mockingbird is an interesting book on a lot of levels. But one of the things, and I think the central lesson of To Kill a Mockingbird is empathy. Remember that great scene when they're on the porch swing and Atticus is teaching Scout about that you have to walk in another person's shoes? I've actually come to think more and more that why I like hanging around so much with readers is that we do that every day when you open a book. Ann Beattie says a novel is a unified consciousness. I think that's true. It's another person's soul. And if they're really telling the story right, they're going to really let you know what it's like to be them or what it's like to be that character. And readers do that every time they read. And so you develop a sense of empathy. That, in my opinion, is why reading connects people so well. You know, in a country where everything is more spread out and we're telecommuting and we're doing this, the thing that is really, really kaboomed is book clubs. Think about why that is. Who here's in a book club? Right? I mean, it's remarkable. And some are in more than one book club. Anybody in more than one? And some have 10 years standing. It's funny because, thank God for book clubs, and a lot of them will read me and they'll say, will you come? I go, sure. I have no personal life. I'll tell you more about that later. And same thing happens every book club. The first 5 minutes they're talking about the book, particularly standalones in April. They're sort of good book clubby books. The next 50 minutes segue into my husband, my dog, my cholesterol, my hair. And they're having a great time, and I'm having a great time. And somewhere in that discussion, somebody will look up at me. It happens every time. Because we're women, we apologize all the time. So somebody's going to apologize. And they're going to say, I'm sorry, we're supposed to be talking about your book. And I say the same thing. And I almost get choked up when I say it, which is, oh, but you are. You are talking about my book. Because whenever you talk about what part of a book you liked or what part you hated or what author you liked or what author you hated, you are talking about yourself. And what the art enables you to do, and I think books particularly enable you to do this, is that you can talk about yourself in this unique way, and it opens up your imagination and it connects you to somebody else. And book clubs, I think, partly form those binds because that last so long, because they're connected by that art. If you ask me what is the purpose of the arts in society and why I revere libraries so much, is because they safeguard that for us. And that is the very reason that art builds community. Because somebody is telling you something in a book and it is connecting with you. Now, what are they telling you that makes the connection? What they're really telling you is something true. Whether it's fiction or it's nonfiction, and I've written both, they're telling you something true. Francis Ford Coppola, the director, has a wonderful quote. He said, he likes the Godfather movies, right? Nothing in my movies ever happened, but all of it is true. That is really profound, and that is what everyone's trying to do. So for me, you go, where do you get your ideas? Oh, they have to come from some emotional truth in my life to be real. Quick story. I'm driving, my daughter grows up. I'm a single mom. She grows up, which is devastating enough. She stops nursing, and I have to take her I see some friends here that we were babies, from when kids were babies together. And I have to take her to college, and she's leaving college. She's going to come home, but I know she's not going to be long coming home, right? And so I go there, and I bring the car, and I'm packing the car with all her stuff. Who here has ever packed your kids up from college? Oh my God, it's a nightmare. Okay, the girls, they have shoes, they have books, they have earrings. The boys, they have a baseball cap. I sit there and I go, what? Why? All right, she's packing everything in the car. We stick it in the car. We even pack the sunroof. We put the box spring on top. We put the mattress on top of the box spring. And then she wants to save this red rug. It is a $37 rug. Seriously, it is. I'm like, we're throwing this away. She, no, I don't want to throw it away. I really want to take it. I'm like, fine, because I deny her nothing. And so we wrap it up. We get in the car. She goes to school in Boston. We're driving home to Philadelphia. In Connecticut, the worst rainstorm in the history of rainstorms occurs. The red rug is bleeding. I am driving a bloodmobile. Okay, I am driving a car that is, people are pointing and laughing. I do not know the color of plasma, but I think it's a yellowish red. It won't stop. And I look at her and we laugh, and we basically laugh through the next 3 states. And at some point, I start to get a little verklempt, which is Italian for like having too much estrogen. Luckily, that's not a problem anymore. And is this too much information? Why stop now? I start to get a little sad because I've had great talks with my kid in the car. Do you remember those days? You know, when I used to pick her up at school, I would hear everything. The day she took the bus, by the time she got home, nothing had happened. But if you get him when you pick him up somewhere, or we've had long road trips, and it's almost like girl therapy on wheels, like you're talking. And I realized that we weren't going to have fun times like this in the car anymore because she was going to be an adult and move to New York City, which she did. First, she stopped nursing, which was definitely a step in the wrong direction. And there's a great line about Italian mothers that I think applies to all mothers. But they say, what is the difference between an Italian mother and a Rottweiler? And the answer is the Rottweiler eventually lets go. Good mothers don't want to let go, and neither do good fathers. And so what happened is I was very sad on this way home from Boston to Philadelphia. And when we got past the threshold, I said to myself, this is not going to happen anymore, blah, 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 blah. And I started to think, you're framing this question wrong. I mean, you used to be a lawyer, and a lot of things are about how you frame the question. And if you ask yourself the question, is it easy to let your kid go, you're always going to get the same damn answer, and it's not the right answer. The question assumes that you own your kid. She's not yours to be let go of. She's hers. You got to love her, lucky you. You got to hang with her and pick up her damn socks. But the bottom line is, you don't own her. And as soon as I realized that, I felt better in my heart. And I said, that's a book. There's an emotional moment that is going to underline a book. The book is called Look Again. Now, here's the top line of the plot. Just like the tchotchkes that Nancy Drew is so fanatically looking for all the time. The plot on the surface of Look Again is a woman who works in the Philadelphia suburbs and is a single mom and a fake blonde. I do my research. She comes home someday, and in the mail it says there's one of those cards for missing and abducted children. And she looks in the middle of the picture, and the picture in the middle is her child who's adopted. And you know instantly in that moment, because readers are smart, particularly my readers, but that's right. But readers are smart. And as soon as you give a reader that quandary on page 2 or 3, the reader will know instantly the choice that the main character has to make. The choice the main character has to make is, if she follows out to try to figure out if something was wrong with the adoption of her beloved only child, in fact, the only thing she really has in her life, she could lose that child. But if she keeps the secret to herself and doesn't say anything and pretends she never saw the card and throws it away, she gets to keep the child. What will she do? That book is one of the most successful I've written, but the answer is the emotional truth in that book lies in the question, who owns your child? And it just happened because of that stupid red rug. Right? Everything you write has to come from something emotionally true. Weirdly, this new book, every 15 minutes, it's a bit of a departure for me. And it came out of a funny and weird, well, honestly, I'm turning 60 this summer. And like most women, I am always second guessing myself. Please tell me I'm not alone in that. So I second guess on the little micro level, like, these shoes with these jeans, not really sure about that. Thought about it all the way here. I'm second guessing what I'm wearing. I also second guess on the macro level. Should I have spent so much time with thing 1 and thing 2, which is what I call my ex-husbands? That's when I'm being polite. And there was a relationship in my life, and I will tell you almost anything, and I will tell you the substance of this, but I can't tell you the person because I'll get sued. But this book arose because I was looking back at my life and going, well, you've really screwed up on many occasions. And one when you spent too much time with that guy who was so weird, I think he might have been a sociopath. And I'm like, the more I start to think about that, I go, oh my God, I think that's true. So I start to research sociopaths, and I find out that 1 in 24 people is a sociopath. Whoa! Yes, true. You're raising your hand, sir? At least he's honest. Now, the thing about a sociopath is they're not all killers. That's a great line, I'm sorry. They're not all killers. They're not all Dexter or Mr. Ripley. They're just someone who will see you coming and use you. And if you're a certain kind of person, which is kind of like the kind of person we all are, except for him. He's adorable, though. Loving, trusting, we believe you, we think you're a good person. You know, we don't see you coming. We actually don't see you coming. And so in a way, I wanted to explore how I got myself into trouble. And when you start to read the literature about sociopaths, you see that there's a lot of blogs online from people who have met sociopaths and kind of, they call themselves survivors. And at first I thought, well, that's a little victim-y. But then I started to read about it. I go, you know, actually it isn't. You've really met a person who really was intent on doing you harm and did. Either they took your money or they were mean to you or they did various things to really screw you up, and they succeeded. And I said, that's the next novel. Now, the first step in this novel was to go see psychiatrists. No. I went to the head of psychiatry because here was my instant problem. I had read enough about sociopaths to know that if you take some kind of thermal image of their brain, which you can do, it's a heat image, and it shows that the amygdala, look at me, Professor Lisa, the amygdala is the emotional center of your brain. In a sociopath, because they don't connect very well, they lack empathy, the opposite of To Kill a Mockingbird. They don't have the connections that we do to friends or book clubs or our dogs or our cats or our kids. Their brain center has so little heat activity that it shows up as black. It shows up as a black hole in the center of the brain. The exact opposite in terms of that kind of imaging from a sociopath's brain is the brain of somebody with anxiety disorder. Because they have all these attachments and they're always worrying, and that sounds a little like me. And so I said, gee, that's kind of two, or most women I know. And I said, well, that sounds like two very interesting things. Maybe in this next book you can make the sociopath the bad guy, and your good guy is going to be a psychiatrist with a secret anxiety disorder. Ooh. That sounds good. I'm excited. Now I got to find out if it's possible. Usually I wait till the end. That's not a good thing. But this time I went to this head of psychiatry and I said to him, here's my problem. Before I begin this book, I would need to understand something. My mother always had that little saying, I don't know if you've heard this, if you're so smart, how come you're not rich? You heard that? She had a lot of stuff like that. And I carry it all around, which I kind of like. But I said, if you're such a good psychiatrist, why would you not know it if there were a sociopath in your world? Is it really true that you wouldn't know it? And he said, I absolutely wouldn't know it. He said, sociopaths are almost impossible to detect. And I said, well, you wouldn't see him coming. He said, no. It's not that you wouldn't see him coming because he's already there. And I said, well, that's a line in the first chapter of this book. And that's what I wanted to write about. I wanted to sort of explore what it's like to be a good-hearted person and to be preyed upon and not know it. And since this guy in the book doesn't know that, the central problem in this book is a lot more like previous books of mine, where basically he's a guy. I used to write only women, and then I said at some point, if you look over what I've written, I said, what is a mother? A lot of the questions were, what is a mother? The question look again is also, is an adoptive mother the same as a biological mother? Yes, of course, but let's explore that. In Come Home, a book that I wrote about a stepmother, in fact, an ex-stepmother, because I am an ex-stepmother. And if you wonder if you can have an ex-child, evidently you can, because I do. Kind of weird. Also a novel. And then at some point I said, well, let's segue into what is a father, because I love my dad and I was very close with him. And I wanted to explore what makes a good father. And so I've been doing that, and Don't Go and other books like that. And this book is What is a Good Father, because this father, unfortunately, is about to get a divorce, and he's about to spend a lot less time with his 7-year-old daughter, whom he adores, and whom he's actually close to than his wife, because his daughter has an anxiety disorder. She's only 7, and she's showing signs of the hereditary anxiety disorder that he has. And they have a little closeness. And the mom doesn't really get that. And so that's what's sort of going on in this book, because all of these April books tend to be about families in some way. I think everything I write's about family. And at the same time, he's treating somebody, a young patient who has OCD. And I started to get very interested in OCD and various mental illnesses, but especially OCD, because it's one of those things that I say sometimes myself, like, oh, I feel I'm always on time, that's so OCD. Well, if you talk to somebody who has OCD, they hate when you say stuff like that. Because OCD is torture. Washing hands, checking things, and in this book, a ritual that occurs every 15 minutes in this young man's life, which is he has to undergo it. He is being treated by the main character in this book, and basically he starts to develop a crush on somebody in his class, a girl. And the psychiatrist has to decide what he's going to do about this. It's an ethical dilemma. It's a lot like the dilemma in Look Again, because the psychiatrist is, under the laws, there's something called the Tarasov principle. He has to tell the police or the girl who's a target if she's in danger. But when you do that as a psychiatrist, you lose that patient. And if you lose that patient, you break that therapeutic relationship, the patient becomes even more dangerous. He doesn't trust anybody because his therapist turned on him. And so that's the kind of stuff that this guy's struggling with when his life starts to fall apart and a sociopath stalks him. It's just a day in the life of a, But that's the kind of stuff I want to deal with. I kind of want to write about the issues that we all struggle with and those moments of life that I think do come up. What happened in my own life, I guess this was a little while ago, is that when I started to mine my life for these emotional moments, and I got really used to writing about them and trying to find the truth in them. And then what also happened is I sort of have a side that I like to have fun. As much as I love murder mysteries and read them and all that stuff, I had missed somebody else besides Nancy Drew. I missed Irma Bombeck. Right? And it happened when I was reading the newspaper. I was like, where is something fun? Where is life that's a family life that's fun and real and true? And I said to myself, I was actually speaking at a library event in Laguna Niguel, which is a very fancy community in California. I didn't always lead with the fact that I'm divorced twice. It's like, great. So I sort of mumbled it, and then somebody in Laguna Niguel said, oh, I'm divorced 4 times, and then somebody else said I'm divorced 6 times. I'm like, I should really move to Laguna Niguel, where I fit in really well. But what was funny about that more so is I started to talk to these women, and it turned out that the people who were divorced 4 times had 4 dogs, and the people who were divorced 5 times had 5 dogs, and I'm like, well, I have 5 dogs and 2 divorces, so I'm behind. But what I really realized that day is that I didn't really realize that I would end up like so very a cappella, which is another word for celibate. Sorry, we're adults, right? I didn't know my life would go that way, but you really don't know where your life will lead you. And I said to myself, I can't be really alone in this. Sadly, there are widows in the world, and happily, there are happy divorcees in the world, or even unhappy ones. But why don't you try to write about your life as a woman? Just like Irma Bombeck. I'm not as good as she, but I still try, and I still can write it. And so I sort of write about the funny things. It became a series of books. The first one was called Why My Third Husband Will Be a Dog, which came out of that library event in Laguna Niguel. I write them now with my daughter because I wrote so much about her that everybody was like, do you ever let anyone else talk? And I said, no, but if she wants to write a little of this, she can. And so we started this whole series. She titles them all. One is called Have a Nice Guilt Trip. One is called Meet Me at Emotional Baggage Claim. The one out this summer is called Does This Beach Make Me Look Fat? It's really all about life as a woman. And by the way, if I can suggest it, not my life. Because I think I'm like that kid walking in the library. It's about life in a representative capacity. So it's about telling you the truth about that, even when it's really kind of, well, definitely in the too much information category. Like the time when you look in the mirror and you realize that you have a gray chin hair and you're turning into an Amish man before your eyes. Someone needs to tell you that. Okay, I plucked for you in the hotel mirror. Did you pluck for me? I wanted to write about that stuff to see what it's like to be a mother and a daughter, to be in the sandwich generation, to be in the middle. Right? I have a very strong mother and a very strong daughter. So there's a day, for example, one day at my house when my daughter's home visiting, and she reads a magazine on the kitchen island. And she goes, Mom, it says here that you should throw your plastic razor away every 3 to 4 uses. How often do you throw your razor away? I say, well, when it gets rusty, I throw it right out. She says, that's disgusting. You know, if you don't gross your kid out once in a while, you haven't really lived. And I go, well, all right, fine. At that moment, my mother comes into the room. And I say to her, at that point she was 90-something, Mom, it says here that you should throw your razor away every 3 to 4 uses. How often do you throw your razor away? She said, I don't have any hair. Okay. Good to know. Aren't you glad you came? But after that, she said something because she was so feisty. She was a very feisty. And she got all angry. And I said, what's the matter? She said, oh, I'm so mad. You talk about that razors, and that reminds me of my colander. And I said, what about your colander? She said, my colander broke. You know that colander, she says to me. It was shaped like this. Okay, first clue. All colanders are shaped like that, but okay. It has dots, and the dots were in the shape of stars. And last week, the foot fell off the colander. You know that colander. And I'm thinking a minute, I go, well, wait a minute. I'm practically 60, and I know that colander, so it's a 55-year-old colander. Mom, it's not that weird that it would break. She said, but I paid good money for it. and I said, now this is the moment that isn't about plastic razors and colanders at all, really. Isn't it a little bit the stuff of your life, if you're a middle-aged woman right now, that you're kind of between a generation that thinks nothing should ever, like you don't keep anything. You don't fix any. I'm not faulting them. You throw it away. My daughter's television broke. I tried to find a TV repairman. She's like, what are you talking about? I said, where are the yellow pages? She said, what are you talking about? And I was like, what are you talking about? And then I'm between my mother, who thinks that nothing should ever break. And may I suggest that it's because she never did. That generation doesn't break. Talk about unbroken. World War, depression. Nothing broke my mother. She even beat cancer many times. I mean, astounding, amazing. It's the stuff of our lives. And I think it's really, in a way, it goes back to Nancy Drew, or maybe it's the egg and the chicken is a little confused here. Because I think Nancy Drew is strong because she is a girl. And what I started to want to write was to show the sort of the strength in the women I knew, in everyday women. You know, a lot of our fiction and our culture is fascinated with superheroes. Look at how often superheroes come in to, right, Marvel, Avengers, Batman, till the cows come home. That is a certain, part of that is power notions, and part of that is, if I can say, stuff driven by men. I am more interested in the superpowers that we all have as women. My mother, I swear to God, had him, and your mother probably did too. I've been writing about her for 6 years, and I still get email. I have a mother, Mary. We're Jewish, but my mother's like this. We're Polish, whatever. My mother, the most amazing thing about her, and a completely verifiable story if you have a smartphone, was that, she lived with my brother in Miami. And one day, on a Sunday morning, quiet Sunday morning in Miami, she was convinced that there had been an earthquake. She went and woke my brother up. Wake up, there's been an earthquake. He said, Ma, please go back to sleep. She, undeterred, went across the street to the neighbors and said, there has been an earthquake. And the neighbor said, please go back to sleep, Mary. But she didn't. She went inside the house, and for a reason we'll never know, she called the Miami Herald. On the phone. cub reporter. I would like to tell you there has been an earthquake. They're like, lady, you might be nuts. She said, tell me your name. My mother had the, can I just say the list? She had it. It was Newcomb. It was like rotating names of hate. The names. And he said, tell me your name. So I evidently had the list too. They take each other's names. They hang up the phone. 3 minutes later, they call her back. Mary Scottoline, there has been an earthquake. She said, I know. I tried to tell you, but you made fun of me because I'm old. The earthquake, however, did not occur in Miami. It occurred in Tampa. Do you know anything about Florida geography? I kind of don't, except that one's at the top and one's at the bottom. They're about 5 hours apart. My mother was the only person who, at the exact moment the earthquake occurred in Tampa, felt it in Miami, and so they sent the news van to her house. They interviewed her on her lawn. Underneath her face, it said Earthquake Mary, which she loved. My brother, who is gay, put on his best mesh tank top. The better to show the map of Italy that is tattooed on his chest. Do you think I'm kidding? I'm not kidding. Milan is on his left nipple. And that's how we roll. And they said to my mother, how is it that you were the only, you can Google this, because I will tell you the first sentence of the article. If you Google Mary Scottoline, Hurricane Miami, it says, it was a quiet Sunday morning in Miami, and no one felt the earthquake but Mary Scottoline. And when she was interviewed on her front lawn, did not mention the mesh top, which is a good thing. And asked why she was the only person who sensed it, she looked at me and said, because I know these things. See, when you're raised by a woman like that, you're going to recognize the power that we have, and also that we're somewhat unrepresented in fiction, and you're going to start writing away. And so you're going to write in fiction, and you're going to write nonfiction, and you're going to try to do service, really, not to her and not to me, but to you, but to us, but to the little girls growing up who can see themselves as the star of something and not just the co-star all the time. If you ask me why I write, it's to sort of make that connection. It is a little propaganda. See it, there it is. It's also to make that connection. I mean, that's what I love to come out. That's why I'm going to hug you when you're in the line and probably force my tongue in your throat. No. Because I think most authors feel the same connection that you feel in your book club. We feel it too. And those of you who are virgins who haven't seen me before, like you knew I was going to be like this a little, right? If you've read me, you knew I was going to be like this. Barbara Kingsolver says, to know me, read my novels. It sounds like a contradiction because novels are not true, but it is actually truer than anything. Every year I have a book club at my house. I've had it for 10 years. I have 500 people. It's not just a book club. It's for anybody who reads my books. It was in Time magazine. You can see it on my Facebook page. And the most amazing thing is everybody who comes there, they all get along. Why? Well, they self-selected. I mean, they like the same thing, so they're all a little funny and a little wacky and a little too huggy, and most of them dye their hair. And that is kind of great. And I think that is sort of, it becomes a little community the way a book club does, the way Gwinnett does, the way you all are. And so this is really just a big thank you. It's a thank you to you for supporting each other. It's a thank you especially to the friends of the library. Please do join it, because really they are the friends of the community. And to all of you who are taking such good care of each other, and to the children walking in the door tomorrow in every one of your branches. So, thank you. Now ask me questions. We left time for questions, and I have, and they can be about anything, because you see I'm not shy. And I got nowhere else to go. Though you may. Yes, please.
I want to hear about your pets.
My pets, I have an irrational love of my little creatures. I have 5 dogs and 2 cats and a couple of chickens and a pony and a horse. And You know, I think you end up sort of, at some point it was one of my days when I was sort of feeling a little more sorry for myself for being alone. And I said, you know, it was Valentine's Day. Because Valentine's Day is if you're single, you're like, I'm just going to stay inside now and wait till this passes. And it will. Midnight will come and tomorrow it'll be like normal. But I said, you got to stop doing that. And part of what I started to realize is that what you're really saying is you want love in your life. And the truth is you can fill your heart up with love even if you give it. Like what I said to myself is, just fill your heart with love. Love something, because your heart is not smart enough to know that it is not the recipient, but it is the giver. If your heart were that smart, it would be your brain. And so my pets just give me, I mean, don't we love our animals? I mean, they're just amazing and wonderful and great. And there's no you know, when you talk about what nurtures you in the world, you know, it's interesting to look at the technology because it's changing, and I love it to a certain extent. But if you spend an hour reading the internet, and believe me, I've wasted that kind of time, you feel different than if you read a novel. When I read a novel, I feel at peace and centered and enriched and nurtured. And the best time is when you, like if you're reading with your dog on your lap or your cat, right? Listen, you're going to live 10 years longer, I think. So they're doing great. Thank you. Yes, please, sir. Oh, my old friend. You've been reading me for 24 years. God bless you and your wife.
Lisa, are you still teaching at the law school? And if so, or if you're not, what did you teach?
I used to teach a course called Justice in Fiction at Penn Law School, where I went. And I talked a little about To Kill a Mockingbird. I'm not doing it anymore because I'm writing three times a year. I loved it. I won't bore you with it, but I thought it was important. First, it was important for lawyers to learn how to behave better in the world. And my secret mission for that was to say, listen, look around at this culture and how much CSI and Law and Order, so much of our culture is about justice and involves lawyers. And I do think there's images of lawyers if you look at legal fiction starring lawyers, right? So whether they're women or they're men or whatever, you can trace it, and they tend to mirror our depiction in society, how we're feeling about lawyers in general. So for example, short course, To Kill a Mockingbird, you have Atticus Finch. Everybody's, right? An idealist, stands for what's right. It's the first time that we introduced she was such a genius, that she introduced the American public to the notion that justice isn't the same for everybody else, right? It's different for black people and it's different for white people, and that wasn't only true. She wrote that novel during the civil rights movement, but said it in the 1930s. She didn't want to be political. She just wanted to say, slow down, take a look at justice. Is it really the same thing? Atticus Finch, as a lawyer, is a star. And that's who I think of when we think of lawyers. We wanted that. But when you start to look at the changes in the law and the changes in the country, for example, take Watergate. When the whole world turns on its head and the Attorney General, there's charges filed against him, and all of a sudden the world turns upside down, and by the way, something happens to the law, which is the Miranda case. So Miranda, the guy rapes somebody and confesses to it, but he is set free because he wasn't informed of his right to counsel. As soon as that happened, it introduced the notion into popular life that there's a technicality that will get you off. And the American public, if you looked at the letters of the editor and all that stuff at that time, reacted really strongly to that. Law is supposed to lead to justice, just like it does with Perry Mason, because he always represents somebody innocent, and the guilty guy, for some reason, is always in the back pew of the courtroom. Why doesn't someone tell him to stay home? He would have been fine. It's not rocket science, dude. But we expect law to lead to justice. Atticus Finch suggests it doesn't always. And then after Watergate, when you start to look at fiction about lawyers or depiction of lawyers, I suggested to my class that it is not a coincidence that the most popular work of fiction after Watergate is The Godfather. Because the world has gone topsy-turvy. The law's upside down, the government's upside down, and you're rooting for a mobster. And by the way, the lawyer's an accessory to murder, and the cops are all crooked. And so I wanted them to really look at how fiction reflects times, particularly with respect to justice. And then it goes into the crapper, if I can say so. The Firm, John Grisham, comes along later, will have you believe without batting an eye that everybody in the firm is a mobster. You're like, yeah, what else is new? And then if you go, let's say, to a movie like The Devil's Advocate with Al Pacino, then we'll have you believe that the lawyer is Satan. And why mince words, right? You hate lawyers. At this point, the commercials are on, another important decision that said the lawyers can advertise. Good on you, Supreme Court, but you're seeing lawyers on TV who don't look like Atticus Finch anymore. They're going 1-800, want to sue? And lawyer jokes come involved, and it goes down, 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 until it starts to change in the 90s. And at that point, I think what happened, long story short, is that the depiction of lawyers in crime fiction really became broader. I think it's partly, if I can say, more people started to write. I started to write. I said women lawyers can come in. There are women lawyers. I set up an all-women law firm, and I still get questions like, can you really have that? I go, yes, we have the vote now, and you can have that. But then you go to yourself, well, how is it different being a woman? I don't know. Well, if you're the head of household, like somebody we know, gee, you're going to have a kid in the picture. And you're going to write books about lawyers with kids, and they're the primary caregiver, and all of a sudden, the fiction starts to change, and it happened across the board. 2 quick examples. In popular movies, some of my favorite. My Cousin Vinny. My Cousin Vinny's a lawyer. Right? Everybody loves My Cousin Vinny. He couldn't be farther from Atticus Finch. I actually think that the advent of humor broadened the characterization, so that even a lawyer like Jim Carrey in Liar, Liar. Do you remember the premise of Liar, Liar? He's a lawyer. He can't go a day without lying. That's really very arch. That's really very cynical. But if you put it in a comedy, you can make people laugh. And we started to understand the most important thing of all, which is that people are just people. And by the way, they're not their occupations. None of us are our occupation. That's, I think, in my own life, after my first divorce, are you impressed yet? And decided, gee, I want to stay at home with my kid. How can I do that? I can't be a trial lawyer and be a single mom. And I have no alimony. I've really screwed up. Actually, I've made a statement. That's why I didn't take the alimony. And my dad said, what was the statement? That you're really dumb. I go, yeah. That was the statement. Like, I regret that. But basically, and that's when I started writing, because I wanted more Nancy Drews in, because I wanted more of us in. And so at 5 years of rejection, my favorite rejection letter from a New York agent who said, we don't have time to take any more clients, and if we did, we wouldn't take you. I see that guy every year. I was a keynote speaker at Book Expo last year. He's like, Lisa, I'm like, I don't hear you. Did somebody call me? Oh, I think not. Oh, I think not. Listen, my mother taught me to keep hate alive, man, and anyone who's going to squish someone's dreams like that. But after 5 years of rejection and living on credit cards, which I did, this was at a time when credit cards, it was 21% interest. You could get money cheaper from the mob, and don't ask me how I know that. But I charged my way to 38 grand in debt, staying home with my daughter and trying to get published. And it was a wonderful little life. It's not a sob story, because I thought I was accomplishing something, the most important thing, which was raising her, and the second most important thing, which was trying to write something meaningful. And even to the point where, we have this very strange existence, because I was divorced from her day one. Sherry remembers those days. So here we are. When we finally get to kindergarten, and I'm about a week away from being published at my hardest, lowest point, 38 grand in debt, wondering what's going to happen. The kid goes to kindergarten, and in the sharing circle, tells all my business, right? And comes home and says to me, Mom, you know what? There's kids in my class where the mommy and the daddy live in the same house. I was like, that's disgusting. What's the matter with these people? In any event, 1 week after that, I got my book bought. I wasn't a living wage. I had kept my day job and paid back all that debt, was nominated for an Edgar and lost, but then was nominated and won, got to be president of Mystery Writers, got to write Every 15 Minutes, which was picked as People Book of the Week this week, first time in 25 years. And so thank you. It's sort of an Only in America story. It's an Only in Book story. It's really a story, though, about all of us. I feel like I get to stand here because of all of you, and in a way to represent all of you. and you're fun to write about, and you're even better to know. So, thank you. Do you have a question? Are we okay? Do we have to go? Tell me, my bosses will tell me. What, love?
What authors do you enjoy reading?
You know how people say, what is your favorite food? Like, food is my favorite. So I read like crazy, and I read everything. I love the books that, I actually recently more love the books that I acknowledged in this, because that whole reading about sociopathy and reading a memoir, reading The Sociopath Next Door, fascinating book. I like nonfiction. I read Redeployment on the Plane, which was incredible. Apart from that, I mean, I read a lot. I love all the mystery thriller people. I mean, I just love them all. I love Ivanovich for laughs. I love David Baldacci for his research. I love Harlan Coben because he's fun too. I love Kristen Hanna, who writes more like women's fiction. I love Jodi Picoult because I like my April books. I like that books that are going to make you think about stuff. It's all about quality writing. And I love memoir. I love David Sedaris, Mary Karr. I love all the war memoirs. They're incredible. All the Good Men, Fobbit. There's tons of them. I can't stop reading. And I read an ebook, and I read in. You guys read an ebook as well? Yeah, I read in any form. Like, I like chocolate cake. You can put it on a paper plate, and you can put it on a china plate. It doesn't matter to me. That's form over substance.
I understand that completely.
You get it?
The chocolate cake.
Chocolate cake. Yes, please. SINC President Lisa Malice, stand up. If you're interested in writing, or you're interested in reading, or you just love crime fiction, join. You're welcome. You don't have to be a writer.
Okay.
And men can join too. You know what we call the men? Male members.
Getting ready to my first novel. It's taken me quite a while, so I'm really impressed that you managed to pump out 3 books a year. Other than coming up with your idea and writing 2,000 words a day, which I've heard you say before, what is your writing process? How do you manage to put out 3 books a year?
So the question is, how do you manage to do 3 books a year? And the answer is you have no personal life, as I said.
Is there a process to doing your first draft and then editing?
I don't write with an outline. I mean, as somebody who got divorced about the moment their child was crowning. Did I just say that? I'm not really a great planner. And I kind of like that. I kind of like that. I like that about me. That's a line from a movie. Diane Keaton says it. Because I think for a thriller, your heart should be in your throat a little bit. And it's my little secret, mystical, alchemical belief that if I don't know how, people, do you know how it ends? No. I don't even know how it middles. Are you impressed yet? So if I don't know what's going to happen next, I'm really nervous. And in a way, the book makes me, people go, you're so disciplined. Look at me, you know I'm not disciplined. But I am compelled to write it because I want to see what happens. And it's on my mind all the time. It hangs over my head. Lawrence Kasdan has a great quote. He says, when you're a writer, you have homework every day the rest of your life. It feels like that a little, but it's in a good way. So I never have a hard time. And the funny thing is, even when I worked part-time at another job, I still took a book a year. I mean, I make myself do it. I try to struggle through it. I do not edit on my first draft. I just see the story and see how it comes out, because I'm dying to know. And then there's a great quote of Hemingway. This is the only time I quote Hemingway. Well, there's one other time, but this quote, he says, write drunk, edit sober. So I just make myself get it down, which for women, if you're writing, is not easy. My daughter's finishing her first novel now. Look, you have a lot of insecurities to overcome. Oh, I'm stupid. Oh, I can't do it. I'll never get published. Oh, my hair's funny. Oh, I gained weight. Whatever all this crap is. I go by what Anne Lamott says. Give yourself permission, to write a first draft. So I write a first draft, and then I make it better. And I don't give it to him in New York until it is great, as good as I can make it. The characters sort of tell you, honestly, it sounds weird, but if you're really doing a character-driven thing, which I think I've done my whole entire life without knowing it, but I think I am, then they're gonna, just like life. And if you look at, for example, I'm writing a series. Every October, Rosado and D'Annunzio will come out. I sort of rebooted that series. Accused was a year ago. Betrayed was next. In October, Corrupted will come out. ABC. Get it? Why? Because Sue Grafton is done with the alphabet. And it's about damn time. So that's writing a series. These standalones are not that. And the things in the summer are funny and sort of series-like. Now, there's a difference between writing a series and writing a standalone, as there is in reading one. And the answer, in short, apart from the tchotchkes, is that a series is an examination of character over time. When you're my age, you have friends that you've known for 20 years, 30 years, since high school, and you've seen yourself change over time. And that's particularly true of women and their friendships. So Rosado and D'Annunzio will always have some legal case in it, but it's really about women and their friendships over time, and how that is a completely different animal than a standalone, which will, the arc of the character will begin on page 1 and end on page 375. Both books are written completely in the dark, not knowing where I'm going. But E.L. Doctorow has a wonderful quote about that. He's like, you can journey cross country and not know where you're going, except you just go by the length of your headlights. That's all you really gotta know. What's the little thing that would happen next? And every single thriller is constructed what would logically happen next. And if you have a logical narrative flow, then hopefully you have a page turner because the reader can follow along. They may not love the main character, they may love the main character, but the bottom line is, it's just what that person would do, and that's what they did. Sometimes I think if you have an outline, first it would feel like Mad Libs, because you go, oh, this is the part where I fill in this blank. But also, I've read novels, and maybe you have too, where you are reading something and you don't really understand why the character is doing something, but you have a good heart, so you stay with it, or you spent money, so you stay with it. And then 10 minutes later, you realize, oh, that's why that character drove there, because I had to find that thing. Well, that's not how it works. You don't get to do that. And that happens when you're forcing action on characters that would not do it, or would not do it then. Did I answer your question, or did I just never shut up?
I'm just kind of wondering how much editing you need to do for your second draft if you're writing drunk the first time.
Well, you know what? This is a weird thing to say. I do think I really love getting older. Is that okay to say? I kind of do. And one of the things I love is, I don't know if you read Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers. It's about practice. I believe in practice. I love first novels, and I always buy them because I want people to have a chance. But I'm trying to get better at it. So my first draft isn't so drunken anymore. Okay. Now I'm a little more confident, and if it's a really stinky line, I won't put it in because I want to show off some word I know, or I thought of a particularly lyrical turn of phrase that I want to get credit for. You ever read people and go, well, that's a really pretty sentence. Who gives a crap? It's boring, you know? Or like Elmore Leonard says, he said, I just leave out the parts that people skip. That is brilliant and true, and I try to do it. So my first draft ends up being pretty tight. When I go back, I just have to go, make it better, sharpen it. My mental image is actually, weirdly, a diamond, because diamonds are really compressed, and there's no air in them, and that's why they last forever. How great are diamonds? So that's how I try to visualize the book. And you can never end that process. I mean, you can really never end it. But that's the great joy of it. Sometimes when I read at readings, which I never do anymore, because every time I read, I go, oh, I changed that word. Then I start changing the words. Then the people follow us, it doesn't say that. I know, guess who wrote it? Me. I can. Thank you.
Do you know how lucky you are? You are incredibly lucky. This is this week's People magazine.
I told them, I embarrassed
Rock Hudson. Rock Hudson, by the way. Lisa's up there with Rock Hudson. And there she is. Wow. The book of the week. And this is her exclusive stop in Metro Atlanta. So we are very lucky. The library is lucky. And it says here under Book of the Week in their description, the red herrings come fast and furious. Part of the fun is how skillfully Scottoline leads us astray. Did she not lead us astray tonight?
Thank you.
Lisa, that's your daughter. gift for, for the
Give me anything
raffle.
else you have. Thank you, and I'm sorry to make you wait. Oh, no problem. Did you have some fun? I did. It was a blast. This is my first time. It was great. How have you been? Still look the same. Yeah. Got it. I'm gonna say love. It's all about.
Thank you.